Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe and support me. The first sign of the alien invasion wasn't the typical apocalyptic explosion or massive battleships hovering ominously over cities. Instead, it was the trees, rivers, and mountains that cried out in agony. Lena Morales could feel an ache that gnawed at her soul as she stood on the edge of the Amazon rainforest, watching the horizon turn an unnatural shade of violet. She had lived her entire life surrounded by the vibrant pulse of the jungle, and now it was as if that pulse had grown faint, strangled by an invisible force. "Lena, are you seeing this?" called Dr. Andrew Wells, his voice shaking as he peered through his satellite communicator. He was a geophysicist, and he had been tracking unusual seismic activity for weeks. But even he hadn't been prepared for this. Lena tore her eyes from the horizon and glanced at the screen in his hand. The data was clear: massive shifts in the Earth's magnetic field, strange energy signatures appearing across the globe. It was as if the planet was being manipulated by an external force, something not of this world. "It's not just here," Dr. Wells muttered, more to himself than to her. "It's happening everywhere. Africa, Asia, even Antarctica. Something's attacking the planet itself." Lena nodded, her fist clenching as the breeze carried the scent of burning wood. "The Earth is fighting back," she said softly, though she didn't fully understand what she meant. But deep in her gut, she could feel something ancient, something powerful, stirring beneath the soil. In Japan, Kai Nakamura felt it too. As he meditated in his small garden, surrounded by carefully tended bonsai trees, the wind suddenly shifted. It was subtle at first, a slight breeze that ruffled his hair. But then the wind grew more insistent, swirling around him, carrying with it a voice. Not words, exactly, but a feeling. Urgency. Desperation. Kai opened his eyes, his heartbeat quickening. He rose to his feet, staring at the sky as dark clouds began to gather. It wasn't normal. This wasn't a natural storm. Something was wrong. Across the world, in South Africa, Imani Kumalo was tending to a wounded elephant when she felt the same sensation. A ripple in the air, a low hum that vibrated through her bones. The elephant stirred restlessly, its ears flapping as it let out a low trumpet. Imani's eyes narrowed. She had grown up surrounded by the wild, attuned to the rhythms of nature. This was different. The animals were agitated, sensing something beyond their understanding. And so did she. The planet was speaking, but not in a way that anyone could hear. That night, Lena, Kay, Imani, and Andrew each had the same dream. They found themselves standing on an Earth that was not the Earth they knew. It was primordial, untouched by human hands. The sky was a brilliant shade of green, the trees towering above them, their leaves shimmering with an ethereal glow. And in the center of this dreamscape stood Gaia. She wasn't human, though she took a vaguely humanoid form, tall and graceful, with skin that seemed to shift between bark, stone, and water. Her eyes were deep pools of wisdom, ancient and knowing, filled with the weight of millennia. "You have been chosen," Gaia said, her voice echoing through the air like a song carried by the wind. "The Earth is in danger, not from within, but from forces beyond your world." The Raksheen, a race of beings who have destroyed countless planets, now seek to strip Earth of its life and resources. But the planet will not die without a fight. Lena stepped forward, her heart racing. "What can we do?" Gaia's gaze softened, and she extended her hand toward them. "You will be my guardians, the protectors of life itself. I will grant you powers tied to the natural forces of this world. With them, you will have the strength to drive the invaders away." As Gaia spoke, each of them felt a surge of energy, as though the very essence of the Earth flowed into their veins. Lena gasped as she felt her connection to the rainforest deepen, her senses sharpening until she could feel every leaf, every root, every creature around her. Dr. Wells clutched his chest as the tectonic forces of the planet seemed to align with his own heartbeat. Kai closed his eyes, allowing the wind to swirl around him, carrying him into the sky, while Imani felt a deep bond with the animals she had spent her life protecting, their thoughts and feelings becoming one with her own. Gaia's form began to fade, her voice growing distant. "Go now, my guardians. Protect the Earth. The fight has just begun." They woke simultaneously, hearts pounding, their minds racing. The invasion wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about defending the very soul of the planet. The next few days were chaos. The Rakshine invasion was in full force, their ships hovering above cities, deploying mechanical drones that tore through forests and fields, devouring everything in their path. Humanity's technology was no match for the invaders, and panic spread as governments scrambled to respond. But Lena, Kay, Imani, and Dr. Wells knew what they had to do. Their first battle took place in the Amazon, where the Rakshine had begun terraforming operations. Their machines ripped through the trees, their engines spewing toxic fumes as they converted the lush rainforest into a barren wasteland. Lena stood at the edge of the destruction, her heart breaking as she watched the forest die before her eyes. But she wasn't powerless anymore. She raised her hands, and the earth responded. The trees began to move, their roots surging upward, twisting around the alien machines, crushing them with the force of nature itself. From the sky, Kai descended, riding on the wind. He directed a powerful gust toward the Rakshine forces, sending their drones crashing into the ground. The air crackled with energy as he summoned a storm, lightning striking the invaders with precision. Imani called upon the creatures of the jungle, summoning jaguars, snakes, and birds of prey to attack the alien machines. The animals fought with a ferocity that matched her own, their bond with her strengthening with every moment. And Dr. Wells, standing at the heart of the battle, called upon the Earth's core, causing the ground to tremble and split beneath the Rakshine's feet. Their machines fell into the chasms he created, swallowed by the very planet they sought to destroy. Together, the four of them fought as one, their powers intertwined, their connection to the Earth unshakable. The Rakshine had never faced anything like this before. An enemy not just of flesh and blood, but of the very elements themselves. When the battle was over, the forest was quiet again. The Rakshine had been driven back, their machines destroyed, but the cost was high. The damage to the rainforest was extensive, and though they had won this battle, Lena knew the war was far from over. "We stopped them for now," she said, wiping the sweat from her brow. "But they'll be back, stronger. We need to be ready." Dr. Wells nodded, his face grim. "We've disrupted their operations here, but this is just one front. They're hitting us all over the globe." Imani knelt beside a wounded jaguar, her hand resting gently on its side as she whispered soothing words. "Gaia chose us for a reason. We're the only ones who can stop them." Kai looked to the sky, where dark clouds still lingered, remnants of the storm he had summoned. "We have to take the fight to them. If we wait for them to strike again, it might be too late." Lena's heart clenched. She knew he was right. They couldn't just defend it, they had to attack, to strike at the heart of the Rakshine's invasion force. But how? That night, as they gathered around a small campfire in the depths of the Amazon, they reached out to Gaia once more. The connection was faint, weaker than before, but still there. Gaia's voice whispered through the trees, guiding them to their next step. "The Rakshine are after the heart of the Earth," Gaia said softly, her voice filled with sorrow. "They seek to extract my essence, the life force of the planet itself. If they succeed, Earth will wither and die, and all life will be lost." Lena shuddered at the thought. "How do we stop them?" "There is a place," Gaia replied, "deep within the Earth's core, where my essence resides. The Rakshine are preparing their final assault there. You must go. You must stop them before it's too late." The weight of the task pressed down on them, but there was no hesitation. They had been chosen for this. They were the guardians of Earth, and they would not fail. The journey to the core of the Earth was unlike anything they had ever experienced. With Gaia's guidance, they found a hidden passage deep in the Amazon, a cavern that led down into the very heart of the planet. The air grew warmer as they descended, the walls of the cavern glowing with a faint, otherworldly light. As they ventured deeper, They could feel the pulse of the earth beneath their feet, growing stronger with each step. The Raksheen were already there, their machines drilling into the core, preparing to extract Gaia's essence. Lena could feel the heat rising from the Earth's core as they pressed on, the path narrowing as the temperature climbed. Every step made the air thicker, the weight of the planet's energy pressing down on them. Sweat dripped down her back, but she kept going, her resolve unshaken. The further they went, the more she could sense Gaia's presence, a faint hum that echoed through the stone. Beside her, Dr. Wells was silent, his eyes narrowed in concentration. He had been the one to find the path, using his connection to the Earth's tectonic forces to guide them. His abilities had grown stronger since Gaia had chosen him, and now it was as though he could feel the very bones of the planet beneath his feet. Kai moved gracefully, even in the oppressive heat. His connection to the wind was less useful down here, but he was calm, composed, his focus unwavering. He had been quiet since their battle in the Amazon, his eyes always searching, as if waiting for the next strike. Imani walked beside them, her hand resting on the wall of the cavern, her connection to the animals of the earth giving her insight into the movements of the Raksheen. "We're getting close," she whispered, her voice low and urgent. "I can feel them." They emerged into a vast chamber, the core of the earth glowing with an otherworldly light. Massive machines surrounded the core, drilling deep into the molten rock. Raksheen soldiers, their bio-enhanced bodies gleaming with metallic implants, moved with purpose, preparing for the final extraction. The sight made Lena's stomach churn. They were so close to tearing Gaia from the planet. "We have to stop them," Dr. Wells said, his voice steady, though the tension in his jaw betrayed his fear. "If they succeed, it's over." Lena stepped forward, her hands outstretched. She could feel the earth beneath her feet, the energy of the core pulsing through her. The plants that had managed to grow in the depths of the cavern responded to her call, their roots twisting and growing with an almost ferocious will. The vines shot forward, wrapping around the legs of the Raksheen soldiers, pulling them down to the ground. Imani let out a sharp whistle, and from the shadows of the cavern, animals that had been living in the depths of the earth emerged. Giant bats, blind cave snakes, and creatures Lena couldn't even name. They surged forward, attacking the Raksheen with a vengeance, their teeth and claws sinking into the soldiers' metallic flesh. Dr. Wells raised his hands, and the ground beneath the Raksheen machines began to tremble. A deep rumbling filled the chamber as cracks formed in the stone, swallowing the machines whole. The soldiers struggled to regain control, but it was too late. The earth itself was rising up against them. Kai moved like the wind, darting through the chaos, his hands weaving patterns in the air. The wind howled through the cavern, picking up debris and smashing it into the remaining Raksheen soldiers. His movements were precise, controlled, every gust of wind finding its mark. But the Raksheen were not easily defeated. Their leader, a massive bio-enhanced general with silver skin and glowing eyes, stepped forward. He raised his arm, and a beam of energy shot toward them, cutting through the stone and earth like a knife. Lena barely had time to react, throwing herself to the side as the beam scorched the ground where she had been standing. "We're not going to be able to take him down easily," Dr. Wells shouted, his voice barely audible over the roar of the battle. "We need to focus our efforts." Lena nodded, her mind racing. They had to stop the extraction, but they couldn't do it while the general was still in control of the battlefield. "We'll distract him," she said, her voice firm. "Kay, you and Imani need to take out the machines. Dr. Wells and I will handle the general." Imani didn't hesitate, sprinting toward the drilling machines as Kai followed, the wind at his back. Lena turned to face the Raksheen general, her heart pounding. She had never faced an opponent like this before, but she knew she couldn't afford to be afraid. "Let's do this," she muttered under her breath, feeling the earth's energy surge through her. The vines responded, growing thicker, stronger, wrapping around the general's legs. He snarled, ripping the vines away with inhuman strength, but Lena was ready. She raised her hands, calling on the earth's core, drawing on the molten energy that flowed beneath them. The ground beneath the general's feet cracked open, a wave of heat and fire surging upward. The general roared in fury, his metallic skin glowing as he absorbed the energy, his strength growing. Lena's heart skipped a beat. He was feeding off the Earth's power. "Wells, we need to cut him off from the core," she shouted. Dr. Wells nodded, his eyes blazing with concentration. He placed his hands on the ground, and the tremors began again, the earth shifting and groaning as he redirected the energy flow. The general stumbled, his connection to the core weakening, and Lena seized the opportunity. She called on the plants again, sending them surging toward him, their roots wrapping around his arms, his legs, holding him in place. With a final burst of strength, Lena raised her arms, and the earth responded. The ground beneath the general erupted, swallowing him whole. His scream echoed through the chamber as he was consumed by the planet he had tried to destroy. Lena collapsed to her knees, her body shaking from the effort. The battle was over, but the cost had been great. The chamber was in ruins, the machines destroyed, but the core still glowed, the energy within it pulsing with life. Gaia's essence was safe. Imani and Kai returned, their faces weary but determined. "We did it," Imani said, her voice thick with emotion. "We stopped them." Lena nodded, her eyes on the core. For now, as they stood in the cavern, the ground beneath them rumbled again, but this time it was different. It wasn't the destructive force of battle, it was Gaia herself, her voice filling their minds, soft and warm, like the wind through the trees. "You have done well, my guardians," Gaia whispered. "But the fight is not over. The Raksheen will return, and there are others who seek to harm the Earth. But you are not alone. You will always have me, and you will always have each other." Lena closed her eyes, letting Gaia's words wash over her. She could feel the weight of the responsibility pressing down on her, but she wasn't afraid. "Not anymore." "We'll protect you," she whispered, her voice steady. "No matter what." As they made their way back to the surface, the air grew cooler, the oppressive heat of the core fading behind them. The world above was quiet, the stars shining brightly in the sky. The earth was still wounded, but it was healing. And as long as they stood together, it would continue to heal. Lena looked at her friends Dr. Wells, Kay, Emania, and smiled. They had been strangers once, but now they were bound by something greater than themselves. They were Earth's guardians, protectors of life, and they would fight for as long as it took. The battle was over, but their journey had only just begun.